She's never allowed to open the enclosure doors, and she's never allowed to interact with them without me being there. That is the major rule. She's never allowed to do that unless I'm there. I've also got access to other adults within earshot that can help unwind a situation. But yeah, there's certain things I have in place which, if something were to happen in that respect, but predominantly I'm just relying on just consistency and giving the snakes a routine, and just letting them, just reminding them, it's always handling time and not feeding time, basically. Yeah.
I think this is one of those episodes that is equally as interesting to non-reptile keepers as it is to reptile keepers. Today I'm speaking with Ed Taoka, who is a keeper of 2 large reticulated pythons in the UK, and he's also the source of millions and millions of viral views on his page. I'm sure you, even if you're a non-reptile person, you've probably seen images or video clips of his content, and then most of those revolve around his huge snakes interacting with his small daughter, who's anywhere between the age of 3 and sort of 8 in most of the pictures and video. And it's sort of this, I don't know if it's a visceral reaction or you get some sort of unease seeing these photos, because it's actually quite scary to see a large snake interacting with a child, or at least that's sort of the immediate response that somebody might get. That's why I absolutely loved having this conversation with Ed. He walks us through how these interactions have worked over the years, how he's actually socialized his animals to be incredibly tame, for lack of a better word, and how he's made sure that there's precautions in place, that the interactions between the snakes and his daughter have absolutely zero negative side effects or any sort of a negative events happen with those interactions. It's a conversation that I think is so important, because when you see Ed's content, quite often, again, it's that knee-jerk response that somebody might have, that this keeper is not responsible, and people who aren't snake people are thinking, oh my gosh, that snake is going to size up and eat the kid. That whole classic wives' tale just continues to be part of the rumor mill. So having a conversation with Ed really will let you know how deeply he thinks about this and how much intuition and he has with snake body language, and just his ability to socialize these animals beyond which I've seen before at all is just remarkable and incredible. So I was happy to talk with Ed today. I know you'll find this episode interesting, so enjoy, and I will catch you afterwards. Awesome. Well, Ed, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and yeah, I try and make this not as boring as. Yeah, thank you for having me.
I don't think you could make it boring, because you have a fascinating page. One of the listeners had recommended you, actually, and I was like, oh, I'm not familiar with the page. And then as soon as I started seeing your Instagram posts, then I realized, of course, I do know who you are, because you have many iterations of viral posts that go along. People who don't even keep reptiles have probably seen some type of your content, whether it's your content itself or people coming in and filming your, especially the relationship your daughter has with your snakes. It's really fascinating. So I have a feeling that this episode could attract people who don't keep reptiles. Like, most of the listeners are reptile keepers, so they're to find somebody who keeps 2 large snakes is not abnormal for anybody listening to the podcast. But if there are people listening who don't keep reptiles, it's a very peculiar thing, right? It's like, how is that even possible? So I would love to know, how did you land on keeping reticulated pythons? Did you start with some smaller species first and build your way up, or what's the story there?
Yeah, I started off small. I started off when I was very young with a garter snake, and yeah, I had many years that snake, and from having that snake, I then progressed to a few different other species along the way, and I've kept a few different species.
Do you only keep the reticulated pythons now? Do you have any other reptiles at all?
Not anymore. No, no,
Okay.
no. It's only Sonny and Cher. It's only Sonny and Cher that I keep. It's just two retics is more than enough.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. It's a lot of work.
In our household, we kept reptiles like for as long as I can remember. Like, so back when I was 5, 6, we had tortoises, and then I got a garter snake when I was 8 or 9, and it's my mum's influence on that. So yeah, that's how it kind of spiraled. But then I did have quite a few different species of reptiles, and then because like a lot of people, like I'll go to uni, like, do my degree and stuff, and all that. I had to downsize my collection, and I had to rehome my collection because it was just too much, and yeah, that really actually kind of upset me, but it was something that had to be done at the time. But then then this is the point where it gets, sorry, I don't mean to be so long-winded, but when
No,
I said
please.
that, I remember jokingly said that I would never ever keep reptiles ever again unless it was something like a reticulated python, and knowing that I would never actually realistically keep a reticulated python at the time. So yeah, fast forward to when my child was born, and then yeah, I had no real hobbies because I was just working and looking after my child and stuff. And yeah, it just so happened. I know I just found reptiles again and got back into it through that way. And yeah, it was reticulated pythons I was looking at for whatever reason, and just started researching and just started getting into it that way. So
Well, I
yeah.
think that's a pretty common story for people that like if they don't keep reptiles, they may not see that connection, but there is that needing to have a purpose and needing to have a hobby, and it does fulfill that for many people. It's just this kind of a thing that you can do in your life that's in the same way somebody might work on cars or whatever. Everybody has different hobbies. Reptiles and keeping fish, for example, as well. Just there's something about that can be kind of calming, and it directs your mind to something, and you're caring for and nurturing a being. So there's a lot of like check marks that it ticks for people that need a hobby. And so when you decided, like, did you remember deciding I'm gonna get this retic? Because that's a big jump, to just not have reptiles for a long time and say like I'm gonna jump in both feet into like basically the biggest snake you can own.
I suffer from anxiety and depression, and I get massive anxiety attacks. And I was working out, and I had a massive anxiety attack. And by complete luck or coincidence, there was a reptile education program working in the same event that I was working, and they are called Tom's Talking Reptiles. And yeah, they put a boa constrictor around they let me hold it, and I put it around my shoulder, kind of thing, and I immediately calmed down. It was like back from when I was a child, and it was like I just immediately calmed down, and I had to, and it was that as soon as I had that taste again, I had to go back and try and find out if I wanted to go back keeping reptiles, and then yeah, and then the reticulated python issue in the back of my mind when I said jokingly, I'm never going to keep reptiles unless it's a reticulated python. So I thought that's the animal that I was really interested in. I absolutely from the start of when I was very young, reticulated pythons really fascinated me. Anacondas and reticulated pythons, they were something almost mythical, almost about their size and their reputation, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I
It's
thought yeah.
It's funny that you say that. I recorded maybe about a year ago. Recorded an episode with an individual named Cher. She might be listening to this right now, and she has an Instagram page called Snake Therapy, and she talks about using snakes as like a form of therapy for people who have anxiety or depression, or a lot of times with autism or ADHD. And there's a lot of the feedback she gets is that instant calming that people get when they hold a snake. There's
Yes.
this, especially and then also for people who are overcoming a fear, that can be a big win for them as well, to get over the fear of a snake. But once you get over that, to have this sense of relaxed and calm, it really helps people just be in the moment and kind of forget about what's causing the anxiety.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. I would very much agree with that. Very much agree with that.
So then tell me about when you went and actually got your first. I think Sonny was the first one you picked up. You have two reticulated pythons now, but tell me about the story of getting her, and she was still just a hatchling, I think.
Well, I said I did. Like I said, I was doing research. I was before even going down this road. I was just looking at what species and whatever. Like I said, but yeah, I really did was settling on reticulated python for some odd reason. But like, I'm trying to like I said, I got my well, I did enough research to try and find a reputable breeder.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most important thing. Like even from going back in the day, find a reputable breeder who's captive bred. Find and that will at least you'll win half the battle in from the start, kind of thing. So yeah, I found a local breeder and a good friend of mine at Imperial Retics, and yeah, and I was invited to his to see what he was doing and his breeding projects were and stuff. And he let me handle some of the babies and see the adults and everything like that. And yeah, one of them was Sonny, and yeah, obviously, and a lot of they're very a lot of the babies, some of them, well, they were they were obviously well handled, so that obviously made things a lot easier of calm introductions.
Mm.
And yeah, that I think that finding a reputable breeder made my life a whole lot easier than because yeah, you don't start off with all the anything all the troubleshooting problems that you do get with certain pet shop
For sure.
uh, animals, so to speak.
Did you have any worries about going into buying such a large snake? I mean, you get to start with the hatchling, but was that kind of part of the plan? You getting to start with the smaller iteration of it and letting it grow with you, or were you pretty confident right away with okay, I'm going to be okay with a 15 or 16-foot snake?
This is the thing. Growing up, I've kept boa constrictors, even a Burmese python, but this is in my
Okay.
teens. Bless my parents; they were very supportive. My mom, she had parrots and things growing up when she was a child, and I think she wanted to try and not impart that. But there's a lot of handling knowledge that I feel I've got from my mom, and she kind of definitely was very supportive in that sense. But no, so I've kept constrictors, and I'm aware of them, and the size didn't really bother me too much in the terms of I think my Burmese he was 12, 13, about 12 foot, so
Okay.
but yeah, so that wasn't too much of a problem. But yeah, but if you're starting off from a 2 foot bootlace, and well, once I was holding this animal in my hand, it was I understood that it's behaving like any other captive bred non-venomous snake. It was behaving exactly the same, regardless. And then yeah, that was my understanding of it. And yeah, just started handling it like any other snake. But yeah, growing with it over time. And you're not really seeing that growth as other people are seeing it because they're seeing it these staggered stages of from small to large, but obviously you're just working through it, and everything feels the same kind of, and the size. I don't know if you become desensitized to the size, but it wasn't till they hit 15 foot where I was like, oh my god, they're actually getting quite big.
Yeah, yeah.
But wasn't till then I was literally going, oh, hang on a minute, they're actually getting quite big,
Yeah,
and
it's like
so
you're having a child. Like you don't pay attention to the growth until one day you're like, "What? Well, how are you so big suddenly?" And you just go through stages of that, and it's just such a slow process that you kind of are habituated to the growth as it happens. Now, I'm curious with because when I watch, actually, first, how long ago? Like, how old is Sonny?
all right, Sonny is 11 and Cher is 10.
Okay, so you've had them for both about a decade, and
Yeah.
I'm curious when I watch you work with your animals or the way they interact with your daughter, which we'll get to in a second. It's clear that they are very socialized animals, and that you spend a ton of time making sure there's like this human animal interaction. Is that? I'd love to know how you did that. Like, how did you make sure that they remained tame, for lack of a better word? And also, was that something that you did with your snakes when you were a teen, or is that something that you really just kind of locked in on in this iteration of keeping them?
Socialization part of it has been a major part of keeping animals. It's the fun of it. It's like trying to bond with an animal, and that means trying to make it tame or as sociable as possible.
Oh, that was just something that you always have done, even with your animals when you were a teen, right? You were kind of working with them in that
Yes,
way. Yeah, yeah.
I said my mom. I said my mom ingrained it. It's the responsibility of every pet owner to make sure their animal is as tame and social as possible, and especially if it's to be near other people and children. So and that's it was like I said that's been I said that's the ethos of what I've been trying to do with Sonny and Cher. Like I knew that they can well to a point I knew they could be tamed down, but I didn't know how far that could go. And when I got the snakes, I knew that I was going to be having to deal with quite a feeding response because I
Mhm.
think reticulated pythons are notorious for a feeding response, and that for me was one thing that I knew I had to deal with, and that was something I had to do with the tub training. I was trying to desensitize them to a point where every time I opened the tub, they wouldn't do anything. They got to a point where they weren't doing anything.
And so
And
then
it
every
was,
time you open it, thinking that they're going to be fed, and then they're striking out to that sort of thing. Like that's what you mean by getting them to reverse that.
yeah, yeah, there has to be, if they're reacting to something like that by the door, or the door or the tub opening, then there has to be another cue to stop that. But at the same time, they behave like any other captive bred snake, which if you literally, not saying just stick your hand in and pick it up, but you can get them to a point where they just don't care, and
Mm-hmm.
you can then, or they actually understand what's going on. They understand, oh, this is handling time, not feeding time. And there is a distinction between handling and feeding with how I approach this. And yeah, it's, how I've tamed them down has been the case of, yeah, try and get them so used to me that there's no point in trying. There's no fear. There's literally no fear. They're very chilled out animals. No matter what I do, my face can be here. They can be on my head. Nothing bad will happen to them, and they're just very relaxed animals, especially when they're outside the vivarium. They're
Mm-hmm.
just they're just very chilled and relaxed. But yeah, I always try and keep it that kind of uh,
Distinction,
method.
basically. Yeah. So when you're like, if you have them out, you're able to? I don't know, I'm sure your daughter as well can touch their face and their head, and there's no recoiling there. Like they're desensitized to how like physical touch to their body as well.
Yeah, even if you were to accidentally swat them or whatever, they wouldn't react in a way that we would perceive. Like they wouldn't immediately strike out or whatever. I've accidentally trodden the tail. I've closed the door and the tail's been got jammed in, and they have spun round to find out what's going on, and almost, and look, and honestly, I thought I deserved to be bitten. That's what I was thinking. I deserved to be bitten, and they didn't do that. There was, it was almost like this thought, like, yeah, like it wasn't me kind of thing. It was that they were trying to work out what was going on, but they were very forgiving. They were very forgiving. That's what I want to say. They're very forgiving,
Okay,
and
that's fascinating.
yeah, they're not, yeah, they don't immediately go straight for a lunge or whatever. That's, yeah, they're very laid back actually, and very, yeah, forgiving.
And that is strictly due to the work that you've done with them. I mean, if you take a reticulated python that's not socialized at all, you're going to get a totally different response. So if anybody's listening who's not familiar with them, it's not like that's how they come out of the box. It takes some time for them to get comfortable. And basically, you're just almost eliminating their natural fear in this environment, right? They have no fear, so they're not worried about, there's no anxiety on their part being in a big open space or being interacting with two humans. It's not a big deal.
But this comes down to back to how the hand, why the, it's about, it's not, it's about, it's ethology, the ethology, the science of why, of animal behavior and
Mm-hmm.
why snakes bite in the first place. It's kind of addressing that. Why do snakes bite? And there's two reasons: because they're either fearful, they think there's a threat, or they think there's food. And there's two reasons. And the handling, like any other species, it can diminish that behavior, and almost to the point where, yeah, you get very socialized animals that they understand what is food and what is human interaction.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then, so when you approach them now, how do you differentiate moments of I'm opening up their enclosure to let them out to explore to moments of actually feeding them? Because that's another thing. As soon as an animal smells prey or like a boa or a reticulated python, the switch will turn on. So how do you make sure those are two different scenarios as far as they're concerned?
The food is a separate thing, and like you said, it's the smell of the food. That is the major distinction of when it's handling and when it's not handling. If they can smell food, it's game on, and there is a retic food drive there, and yeah, it has to be treated differently to typical handling. But it's normally the smell of the food which sets them off.
Mm-hmm.
Anything other than that, and the way how this is done, if you open the door without any food or anything, if you walk anywhere near the cage, if you open it, you can get in, you can do anything you want, and there's no reaction or there's no food response. That's the on off. The smell of the food for me is what will cause them to do their food response, their hunting response, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't. there's certain things I don't do with the food. I make sure I leave the food at room temperature on the floor, and yeah, they'll come to it and eat it off the floor. It's almost like a scavenger kind of existence rather than going through the hunting.
Is that in
And
their enclosure?
yes, I literally
Okay.
yeah I just do drop feeding, put it with newspaper. I don't even heat the food up. It's just warm. It's just warmed up at well, it's at room temperature in the kitchen, and then I bring it to them in another room, and yeah, and then it's that smell of the food which sets them off. They can
Yes.
smell it, and yeah, and that, yeah, and that's. But my daughter's not allowed to do that because she's not strong enough, and I don't want her getting a feeding bite. So
Exactly.
at
Yeah.
times, so,
Now, are they still kind of on high alert after? I know this happens with my boas, where they're the chillest animals all of pretty much all time until I feed them, and they will be fired up for like I want to say 24 or 40 hours after I feed them. You know, at that point, I could still see that food response. If I walk past the enclosure, I can see their eyes following me, that sort of thing. Do your reticulates do that as well, or do you think that once they've eaten, they're kind of satisfied and they don't think there's more food coming?
what I encounter with them after so they've eaten and they've eaten one rabbit or two rabbits and they're always looking at me like they want more.
Yes.
They're always looking at me like they want more. But it's a bit you're after they've eaten and I've seen them eaten and I would go to retrieve the newspaper or whatever. Open the door and there's acknowledgement that it's me. It's not and they're not gunning for me, so to speak. Or maybe a few times, maybe they have like tracked me a bit, but they haven't. It's like that they're feeding things over by that
Mm.
point. It's like, and once you start messing with them a little bit, that's it. And then as the days progress, there's nothing until next. There's nothing until next month or something.
Okay. Yeah, that's really fascinating. So I'd love to know what your kind of thought is on their cognitive abilities. I mean, everyone talks about reticulated pythons being incredibly bright, but you mentioned a few times that they act similar to other captive species. So you have to wonder how similar like snake intelligence is across the board. But reticulated pythons always end up on the top of the list as far as very intelligent animals. So how do you think that they, and this is kind of a bad question, but how do you think they perceive the world? Like, is it, they're not quite as connected to you as maybe a dog or maybe a cat, but how do you think they obviously recognize you? They recognize your daughter. Do you feel like they could recognize a person who isn't you? If someone else walks into the room, do they act different because they know it's not you? That sort of thing?
That's a good question. As I said, going back to when I first started keeping reptiles, so with the tortoises, like you could there's certain things you could tell that they enjoyed or what they didn't enjoy, and when you could literally stroke them underneath the chin, and they would literally extend their necks
Mm.
and right out, and you could get them, and you could see them almost closing their eyes and just stroking their chin, and that's the same thing I found out when I was 5, 6. Oh, they respond to being touched, they respond to being stroked. And every snake, every lizard, every animal that I've ever kept has always responded in the same way as Sonny and Cher. They've turned out exactly the same. Yeah, I would even say the water snakes that I kept had a stronger feeding response than Sonny and Cher. And yeah, it's really strange how that is. It's just what I said that they've always been quite. I can't think of an animal that hasn't been calm or tamed through handling through
Mm-hmm.
that or that given enough time to do so. So
Yeah, yeah. And so you think there's actually, just judging by their body language, there's an enjoyment that they're getting from like physically interacting with a person.
I think a lot of people, even keepers, don't understand what when a snake likes something. We all know what when a snake doesn't like something, it'll bite, it'll musk, it'll poop, it will try to get away. But when in terms of body language, what I see with snakes or with anything, it's like if they go dead weight and relaxed when stroking, it for me it's a sign that they're very relaxed and that they're not trying to get away or anything like that to that degree. And
Mm.
with snakes, it's like with Sonny and Cher, they'll come to you and voluntarily come to you, and they'll place their head and neck on your hand like that, and almost expecting strokes. But that will you can see the body just go dead weight, just relax, like completely relax. And that's how I think I know they like it. That's how they're telling me they enjoy this, for want of a better word. So
Yeah, yeah. That's a really fascinating insight. I've not heard anybody say that, but that makes perfect sense as far as, because a larger snake is actually very good at using their body to push things away that they don't want. Like they'll
yes,
use a
exactly.
coil to like actually like it's almost like they hip check or shoulder check you away,
Yeah.
and you can so if you can, it's very easy to tell, like you said, when they don't want something that's interacting with them. But yeah, that kind of relaxed, just dead weight feeling is probably a very good indicator that they are calm. And that if they're coming to you voluntarily, you have to assume that they want to do that.
I try not to bother them when they're shedding because obviously it's uncomfortable. And sometimes I've had to pick them up, but you can feel there's a lot more rigidity. Like they go all stiff when they don't want to be kind of messed. And I said they'll flick their coil or something like that. But the body language is the muscle tone is completely different when they're stressed. You can feel it in the muscle. It's like, but when it's relaxed, it's completely different. It's completely different. It's not the same. It's not the same thing. But that's how I've been gauging it anyway. Whether it's right or not, I don't know. But that's how I've been gauging it.
Well, I feel like you've had this interesting childhood with your mother, who obviously was very in tune with animals and sort of empathizing with animals and teaching you that it's a responsibility to make sure that they are comfortable in the captive environment. And you're able to use that kind of intuition that you've developed from that experience to put that into caring for these two reticulated pythons. Because I can imagine, like, when I look at your page, I don't know if this is true, but you probably could get equal amounts of hate from non-snake keepers that you do from actual snake keepers. Because if like people who keep snakes and are familiar with them might look at your page and think this is a naive person who doesn't know what he's doing and he's just asking for something bad to happen. But in reality, you have this like deep connection with the animals.
The thing is, I'm up against, even with the retic community, I've been up against it from the start. There's two ways of how you approach. I guess there's two ways. And the thing is, with retics, it's very the hook training or whatever we want to call it is very. It seems to be this very predominant thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But like I said, with every other snake species I've ever kept, we've never had to use a hook. I've never really heard of it until keeping retics, really. And it's how I gauge how tame an animal is. If I can't pick it up by hand, what business does it have to? What business does it have being anywhere near my child if I can't pick it up by hand? So, and this applies to the retics. If the retics were snappy and bitey or whatever, they would not be anywhere near my daughter. But it's because of how they're behaving, like in a calm, gentle fashion with her, that I have deemed it acceptable as safe for her to be interacting with them. But you've got people thinking I'm this arrogant person that's doing it this way or this way. But I'm saying there's multiple ways of approaching this, and my way isn't the only way. So I don't know who's more arrogant in that respect, because I'm saying there's multiple ways, and your way isn't the only way. That's what I'm trying to been up against. That's what I've been up against, but no one seems to take that on board for some reason. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, and you're not telling people this is how you must have you're not telling people you should have your 15, 16 foot retic interact with a child. You're saying that if you, basically the message that I get from your page is if you socialize them to this point, which is a lot of work, they can safely interact with a child. But obviously there's many reticulated pythons that couldn't safely interact with a child. That's because they're just totally cared for completely differently. So I think that's what's fascinating about it. Like when you actually talk to you and you explain yourself, it's like, oh, you actually have this deep connection with the animals and they are, for lack of a better word, tame. So I would love to know, because the listeners will have seen some of the images that have gone around from your page. You have these incredible video shots or pictures of your daughter, who's this little small, toddler or maybe a little bit older. And of course now she's older, but with the giant, 12, 13, 14 foot Sonny kind of next to her. She's having tea parties next to the snake. And it's really cute, but it does make the kind of the hairs on your back of your neck stand up if you don't know the context, right? It's a little bit scary, especially if you're not a reptile person. Then it's, well, like I said, I can't tell if it's worse if you're a reptile person or not, because if you're a reptile person, you know how dangerous it could be. And if you're not a reptile person, you're just afraid of snakes. So, you're going to look at that as a negative light anyway. But can you talk to us about how you started the interactions between the snakes and your daughter? Like, what was the first steps? You had them for 10 years. Your daughter is in her, almost in her teens. So this would have started back when she was actually just a toddler.
Yeah. And this is the other thing. Despite what people think, I didn't get the snakes in mind. Going right, I'm now going to force them on my child, and it's all this is what I'm going to do. This was that the interaction with my daughter came and was realized later on because I was working with Sonny as a baby for 6 months of intense handling, just in and out of the cage, like getting him in and out, working on muting that feeding response. And yeah, just a very gentle snake scooping him up. And then when I was confident enough, and then when I thought my daughter was old enough to be gentle, to understand to be gentle,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of, I kind of realized there's this window where I could let them grow up together, literally grow up together. And if it's done right, the safety implication would be absolutely massive because the snakes would never gauge her as a threat or food. There'd be almost second nature to everyone. That's how I was trying to work it. So yeah, you say teach them young and teach them how to behave young, but it's not just the child; it's the snakes as well. You're teaching everyone to how you want them to how we should calmly coexist, kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was the drive behind it, I guess. Uh, that was it.
And I guess like from like precautionary standpoint, the snake would have still been quite smaller. Both the snakes were quite small at the time. So the safety is more about keeping the snakes safe than the other way around. Because like you said, toddlers don't understand like how much to squeeze, and they're hurting things, and they're whacking animals by accident because they don't know what they're doing. So it's about keeping the interaction positive by keeping the snakes safe, so they're not actually creating a defensive response against her, which creates this negative experience.
I was using my hand to gauge how she would handle a snake, and I was being I would hold out a hand and I go, is this nicer? Is this nicer? And she was like 1.5. Is this nicer? And I'd be doing gentle, soothing strokes on her hand. And then, or is this nicer? And I would instantly grab it, not hard, but instantly grab it, and it kind of shocked her a little bit. And she understood that we're always gentle. We never grab, we never poke. And when I felt she really understood that, that's when I just let her start stroking the side of the snake, and that's how we gradually did it, where it was just small increments over time of positive handling, and yeah, no grabbing, no poking, no fast sudden moves, slow deliberate movements, and she proved that to me time and time again. And the snakes responded in kind. By the time she was 3, she was getting the snakes out without a hook and they were like 12 foot. Like, I've got videos of it. They're just pulling them out. They're not reacting to her. You can see it in the language of the snake, where it's just like it knows what's happening. It's just when it comes out. And yeah, about 3 years old, she's pulling these animals out without a hook. And as this is all unfolding, it is blowing my mind, because I've seen grown-up adults struggling with this whole concept, like, hook, oven mitt, a mace kind of situation.
Yeah.
And and then it's just and then there's just something a bit more simple, and it's a bit more organic, but the safety implication is actually kind of better, because you know the body language of the animal, and you kind of almost can predict how it's going to react to you before you've opened the door.
Yes.
So, and that's what I was trying to talk about, like reading snake body language and predicting correctly, that rather than go just randomly sticking your hand in, going and hope for the best.
For sure. Well, and the thing, you're exactly right. I mean, it's sort of ironic that people will keep these large snakes and then not spend the time to actually socialize them, because of how dangerous they are when they, and I don't even mean dangerous like life-threatening. I mean, just like when they don't want to go in a place you want them to go, or you trying to pull them out of the enclosure, it's virtually impossible. These are incredibly strong animals. They're very powerful, and it's just a super negative interaction where you're yanking on their body and you're trying to uncoil them from whatever they have. That experience will just continue to compound on itself as the snake gets bigger and bigger. Instead, now you have this animal that a 3-year-old could easily pull out when the 3-year-old is not even anywhere a 1% strong strength compared to a 12 or 15-foot retic, right? Like they're amazingly strong. So that is unbelievable. What was your daughter's reaction through those years of development? Has she always been like deeply fascinated by them? Is it just something that's just, we have snakes in the house, she doesn't really see it as remarkable? Or
it's that thing with parents. It's like squishing spiders in front of your children. If you squish spiders in front of your children, they will think it's okay to squish spiders. Mm-hmm. So if mum and dad are behaving positively to snakes, the child will more than likely behave positive to snakes. And I said, and that's what I'm counting. Well, not counting on, but I'm relying on my daughter to mimic how I behave, because if I'm not getting bitten and the snakes are reacting to me in a positive way through what I'm doing, I want my daughter, if I'm going to teach her how to do this, I want her to behave how I behave to limit any accidents, so to speak. So that was really important. That was really important.
If you are a regular listener to the podcast and you want to help support the production of the show, make sure you head to patreon.com/animalsathome. For as little as $3 per month, you can help me pay for the service fees that go along with editing and producing the show. And for as little as $5 a month, you have early access to the episodes. Thank you very much for your support. Enjoy the podcast. And now, I don't know if she interacts them like super commonly or if it's just a once in a while thing, but I'm curious, as she's grown up and as the snakes have got larger, what precautions do you take now? Like, are there still precautions in order? Do you have rules? How do you keep both parties safe?
The major one, and the thing is, and she's proven this to me time and time again. She's never allowed to open the enclosure doors, and she's never allowed to interact with them without me being there. That is the major rule. She's never allowed to do that unless I'm there. That's the fundamentally one. And then, like I said, I've got a hook. I've got bottles of unopened alcohol and mouthwash around the snake for areas. I've also got access to other adults within earshot that can help unwind the situation. But yeah, there's certain things I have in place which, if something were to happen in that respect, but predominantly I'm just relying on just consistency and giving the snakes a routine, and just reminding them, it's always handling time and not feeding time, basically.
Yes. Yeah. And you'd already mentioned that she's not. You don't allow her to feed. She's not at that stage yet.
The trouble, if it was just putting a rat in, that would be fine. But because we're talking about jumbo rabbits, and the thing is, she hasn't got the dexterity or the, because I have to pick it up with one hand and then open the door of the other and looking where the snake is, and then putting she doesn't have that, and I don't really want to expose her to that. Really, it's just not. At this point, it's just not. She could really do it. She could just chuck it in and just put it on the floor. But I don't want to subject her to a probability of a feeding bite on that day. So
yes, yeah. And for those who are listening who may not understand the reference to the hand sanitizer and the mouthwash, that's kind of a tool that people can use to get a snake's mouth to open up if they have bit something and clinged on to it. Sometimes the bad taste of alcohol or mouthwash makes them open. So yeah, that sounds great. And I think that's one of the downsides of social media. Sometimes there's no context with a picture of her sitting on the couch with this giant reticulated python. People think, oh, it's an unsupervised snake, something terrible is going to happen. But really, there's a lot more to the story than just a reckless keeper having a giant snake interact with their daughter.
Oh, I think they're always. I said that I've taken photos when she's been asleep. It said I'll have Cher on the sofa. And this is a typical day, kind of when we're watching movies or something, and she'll fall asleep on the sofa, and the snake will just slither down, and maybe just ignore her, and that's what the snake was doing time and time, just ignoring her and not. I think there's so many stories of the child falls asleep and now the snake wants to eat the child because it's now asleep, and it was kind of that point was really annoying me because she's. That's not the case. It was never. It's like they maybe check out the child, but they weren't going, oh, the child's asleep now, I'm going to eat her. And so I just took some video footage of what we were normally doing. So you got the child. I was literally I took some footage, and my daughter was asleep, and I was initially sitting next to her, but then I got off the sofa to take a shot of the snake and her, and the snake typically again got down, what made a way to my daughter, and then yeah, ignored her and just carried on about its day. It's not they're not hunting when they're outside. They're just more exploratory. They're just more inquisitive than anything else.
Yes.
They're not going straight into this thing. Well, I'm going to hunt now because my child was asleep. And it was just like there were certain myths that I was trying to address that I've heard about them, or about certain stories that I've heard, and it just didn't make sense to me that, oh, because a child is asleep, the snake is immediately going to think, oh, wait, I can eat this child now. And it's like, yeah, it didn't make sense. But yeah, there's certain situations where I've tried to address when they're outside and set certain examples. Like anyway, but yeah, so I don't know if that
No,
makes sense.
that exactly, and the thing is like we are talking about an animal that is dangerous and an animal that could potentially eat a small child. Maybe not the size that they were at when your daughter was small, but a much larger retic it does sometimes happen. Not necessarily in captivity, but in the wild, this is the sort of thing that can happen. But that's a totally different situation than a animal that's been socialized and is essentially a domesticated snake, essentially, and you've spent time with it, you trust it, and you're there to make sure the situation doesn't go awry. Do you guys have a cat?
We did.
Okay.
She died at 9 years old. She had some lumps in her abdomen. Yeah, she passed away,
Okay,
unfortunately.
because that was one thing I was thinking. Like, if you have a cat roaming around the house, that would be one like red flag for me. I think, is that a danger? Like, would the snake see her as prey, or did you make sure they would never interact? Like,
Oh
potentially
no,
never in the same room.
she was never allowed in the same room as the
Mm.
snake. If the snakes were out, she was never allowed in the same room. But if the snakes were in their enclosures, I said she would sleep on top of the snake enclosure kind of
It's
thing, so it's
warm,
nice and
yeah.
warm. So, but never if yeah never I would never. And there was a time actually when, because the cats get zoomies and dogs get zoomies, and you can't really factor that in. And you go, oh, my cat's fine with my snake, whatever. But I did have Sonny on my lap as a baby, and it was the weirdest thing because and normally the cat is locked away, but she somehow just zoomed into the living room, and the snake, like, I'm talking about 12 foot away from the zoomie, just went and did a defensive strike out towards the cat. But it was
Mm.
like it was so far away. I was so shocked by how that reacted, and it almost, yeah, it took me by surprise. Like, oh my word, that was a lot. That was very aware and very heightened alert. But that's probably the first time I've seen it go awry with a cat before like that. So yeah,
Mm.
that was a bit. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
keep them separate. Yeah.
yeah. That makes sense. So tell me about you made the decision at some point to bring the relationship that your daughter has with the snakes to the world, to the public through social media, and we've already alluded to it. There's some risk there, probably mostly for your own mental health as far as posting this stuff, because you're opening yourself up for like every single piece of criticism you could possibly get, and like I said, you're probably getting it from both sides. So,
Yeah, yeah.
what made you decide to do that?
Um, I'm I'm mentally insane. No. Listen, I do. I'm perfectly aware that I've got poor mental health, but like I said, I'm used to. Um, I'm used to either way. I'm used to being blamed, so it's not much of a problem. But
No, I'm just curious. Like, was there a moment where you're like, I'm gonna pull the trigger on creating a social media page, or was there something that happened?
a lot of pet owners like to document their own personal experiences with their animals,
Yes.
and I see it. And I'm no different to everyone else. I'm no like I said, there's retic keepers, Burmese keepers, monitor keepers that are all doing the same thing as me. Like they're documenting, they're showing their own personal experiences with their own animals, and I was doing the same thing but with reticulated pythons. And but then also bringing in my daughter into this, because it became this very convoluted situation where you've got the longest species in the world and a very demonized species um, interacting with the most innocent of a human child, basically. And with that, you're obviously going to get, no one's going to see eye to eye on that issue. People are going to either love it or hate it, and the people that do understand it, they can understand why, and then the people that hate it. I'm not saying that they're wrong, but I'm saying is what they're saying is doesn't apply in context to what's been going on with the situation. It's not you can't generalize it in that way because it becomes really inaccurate with, with everything. So
Yeah. Well, I know even my first response to seeing, not even associated with you, just when I first saw some of those viral kind of meme things go around of your daughter and the snake. At this time, I had no idea who it was. My first reaction is like unease with it, because you're just concerned and you think, oh my gosh, like there's something could go awry there. And yeah, it's
I tell you,
definitely yeah. Go ahead.
oh no, sorry. I didn't mean, but I think it's just because I'm going to forget what you just said.
Yeah,
Because
no,
I'm
please
just so
go.
bad. I'm so bad. But it's that thing about shock factor. It's like people that make videos just for shocking people. And thing is, I promise, it's not about that. The shock comes with my videos in the sense of nothing's happening. That's
Mm-hmm.
the shock. The shock isn't something bad. It's something we've been so ingrained to expect something bad to happen when it involves snakes. That's the thing, and everyone's going, that's the immediate reaction. But when you look at it, it's actually really boring. It's actually really boring. It's just a snake sitting there doing nothing with a kid. That's literally it's very boring, mundane behavior. But then you've got people really trying to. And when you get people irate about it, they're getting irate about really calm, boring behavior. The snake isn't biting. It's not doing anything negative. It's just sitting there. And this is a sad thing. A snake, regardless of if it's on its best behavior or if it's biting or making someone bleed, it's sort of treated the same way. And
Mm-hmm.
this is why I've kind of been doing what I've been doing. I've been trying to break that and push that a bit because and the best way to do it is with extremes. If you get the longest snake in the world and you get a child, people remember it. If not nothing against corn snakes, but I'm saying if you had a child with a corn snake, it isn't as memorable, but the impact is a lot more greater when you've got something that's 15, 17, and that's why it's become so popular because she's grown up with these snakes. And if you don't really know what's going on, you think, oh my God, he's put this child in a room with two 15, 16-foot long pythons, but she's grown up with those snakes and they don't really factor that in how they judge the actual video. But
Yes.
I do appreciate people can look at it going, yeah, I can totally understand why people were going, oh my God, is this safe? I totally understand that. But yeah, at the same time, and within what I've seen with children interacting with dogs, it is safe. I've seen some terrible things with dogs and children, and what I'm doing is actually very very light. It's teaching calm, gentle interactions. It's not treading on your animal and stamping on it and all this other stuff that I've seen online. It's a different thing. It's a different thing,
Yes.
and that's what I've been trying to distance myself. It's not shock, and if it is shock, it's because there's nothing happening. Why isn't the snake attacking? That's the shock. Well, that's my understanding anyway. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And then, there's once you actually uncover it, you realize there's a ton of work behind it to make sure they're socialized and there's precautions put in place. And I think the dog example is good because that's one of the reasons that young kids and even adults will get hurt by dogs is because people become complacent with that because they assume most dogs are safe. And most dogs are safe, but sometimes they're not. And these things can happen where you don't feel like you need to stay in the room with your dog because you know that dogs are generally safe, but then something, whatever happens, a dog can maul a person and it's this horrible situation where you know that the snakes are powerful animals and you're there for her and you've done all this legwork to make sure that nothing bad's going to happen and you have precautions in place that if it were to happen, you would handle it, appropriately. It's, I almost imagine that because there's been a few people that have come to your place to do like features on YouTube. One was Dodo, and there's a couple other ones. I forget what the other one. Do you remember what the
Beastly? It was
Yes.
on Beastly. They came to do an interview thing, and a lot of it was I think on the most part very good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that everything that we've worked on I think has been very positive in that regard. It's never been like this. Well, I hope it's never been negative sensationalist stuff because that's been something that's been really important to me that it isn't negative or it's been sensationalized in a way that would be damaging to the reptile hobby as such. Because I said there's so many bite videos, live feeding videos. There's a lot of stuff that the other YouTubers are doing, and it's just like it's just not it. It's not showing the true. It's not showing the whole picture. Yeah, they can bite, but they can be very very calm, thoughtful animals. And but the thing is, because the bite videos sell and everything, that's obviously going to be more
Yes.
popular in that regard. But
Well, that's what I found amazing about those Beastly and Dodo. The features you've done with them have millions of views. I think the Dodo was like more than 10 million. Beastly was like 2 or 3 million. And when I went through the comments, you can assume that like 95% of the comments are non-reptile keepers, because those sort of go towards general audience, right? It's like the cute animal videos just pop up on people's Facebook and whatnot. I actually had trouble finding a negative comment on those videos. It was people that were like, wow, this is incredible, what an amazing relationship, and you explained yourself so well in those two videos that I think the non-reptile person really had a shift in their perspective about snakes in general, which I think is exactly what you want. I think you probably almost have a harder time convincing reptile people, because a lot of reptile people have these sort of conceived notions of what our animals are like and how they should be treated, that they have these like thick walls of process that can't be interrupted and they don't want to be changed, where the people who are actually just, even they might be afraid of snakes, they were really open to those two pieces, and the responses were incredibly positive. I was really shocked. I was expecting to scroll down and see like a bunch of like people that were just so mortified that they couldn't get to their keyboard fast enough, but it wasn't the case.
no, that really took me by surprise as well. Because I just said initially I was expecting, I don't know what, because I do get, yeah, I do get bad comments. I do get them. I do get them. The death threats, I do get them. But yeah, but with the dodo and with a lot of them, I'm looking at the comments. I'm waiting for like the size. I'm waiting for something, and yeah, the comments on the whole have been really really positive, and I'm glad they could understand what I was trying to say, like about them, which yeah, I was very happy with, because as we did one, it gave me better hope that we can get a better message across than what's been happening currently, because every time someone tries to do this with reptiles, there's always this negative agenda going on. You talk to reporters or whatever, you say something, and then you can see it's been spun in a completely negative, and it's not in the right context, and that really worried me. I was having sleepless nights when the Lab Bible took on a few viral videos and stuff, and I was really worried how those videos were going to be portrayed. And but I was very happy that they took my consider. Well, I said I wasn't prepared to work with them if that was the case anyway. But but they were very supportive. All the media companies have been very supportive as far as I'm aware. So yeah, it's been a positive experience, especially
Well, I
when.
think people really have, because we're animals ourselves, we have an ability to look at another species, even if we can't connect to them exactly. You can read them well enough. As you've already kind of alluded to, people can see that the snakes are not in discomfort. They're not being forced to interact with anybody that they don't want to. They look relaxed. They look calm. Even if you don't know anything about snakes, you can recognize that in an animal. I mean, it's easy. Even if you don't know horses, you can tell when a horse is panicked and worried, and you could just lay that across all. I mean, the other day, my son and I were walking, and a little bird just came up and started yelling at us, basically. And I said, okay, hey, buddy, this is definitely a female bird. Like, let's look around. There's probably a nest. And sure enough, there's a little ground nest and 3 eggs. And I said, yeah, let's just keep moving on. Like, she's, and now he's really upset. So, where's that mummy bird? And it's just that he could tell that this was an animal that didn't want us near. And he knows nothing about birds. And neither do I, really. But you can read that. It's just part of being an animal ourselves. And I think that's probably what's happening is people watch the videos and they can just tell that it's a relaxed experience for everybody. It really, like, do you think that it's having an effect on the public opinion? Because your videos have probably been viewed 50 million times, like, across these different platforms, or way more even. Do you feel like it's having some change?
Oh yeah, when we first started out, there was still there were a lot. I think most of the negative comments were the one thing: the snake is going to size up or measure my daughter. That was the
Classic.
main negative comment: the sizing up, and obviously that's false. And so basically, you could have. So most of everything that we're complaining about was you could ignore. But then, like I said, you did have these pockets of either the general public or other reptile keepers. And obviously, when you're arguing against other reptile keepers, you've got to really be you've got to make damn sure your argument holds weight, because they will roast you. And
Mhm.
some reptile keepers that I've been up against are not have been really nasty and arrogant, and they've said they played a massive havoc on my mental health. But like I said, if my reasons for doing it, I think have been just, and I haven't been doing this just to make a quick buck or put my daughter in immediate danger. That was an afterthought, but yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah,
That
it's I wonder, like, you don't strike me as the type of person who wants to have like internet fame. And so I wonder, like, how has it affected you in general? Like, has it been over? It must be, because even me, my page is not huge, but sometimes if something starts to pop off, and I'll open up and I'll see all the notifications, like my immediate response is being overwhelmed, and I just close the app. I'm like, I don't even want to look at this right now, and that must be on steroids for you. Like, have you felt overwhelmed
I,
in this process?
for 10 years. But for 10 years, so and lack of sleep. I've been grinding my teeth a lot more. I've been.
Yeah.
I think I've even developed. I started developing Tourette's as well at some point. It was just, things have taken its toll, without a doubt. I'm not going to lie. Things have taken its toll, and yeah. But I said I've got to the point where I don't care. I got to the
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
That was it. I got to the point where I don't care, and it's like, I, I, I know where I sit legally, and I know. I still think I've got enough valid safeguards and know withal to understand what I'm dealing with. But yeah, uh, yeah, that's
Oh
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I only laugh because I can totally relate to the feeling of the stress of being contacted by tons of people, and not even contacted, just to have this the the experience of having people comment on things and sharing and leaving negative feedback. Like it's kind of tough to deal with, and you do got to get to a point where you just don't care anymore. And I think that's the only way to like get through that.
Yeah, so when something does get popular, you're always going to have people that hate it regardless. So, and especially,
Yes.
and when you've got animals and children, it's like, yeah, it's like you're going to have very opinionating viewpoints, I guess. But the thing is, but what I'm quite happy to accept is that people don't like it, and I understand why they don't like it.
Yes.
I'm not saying that I'm right, and I'm not saying, but I can only go where the snakes and my daughter go with it. Basically, like I said, if it was anything other than these interactions that they're having, they wouldn't be anywhere near each other. That would be the case. If they were behaving like how I've seen other retics behave, they would not be anywhere near my daughter. That's the bottom one. But
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
people think I'm just forcing two animals that don't want to be near each other or something, but it's not
Ha-
true.
have you ever had any like people report you for like child endangerment or anything like that? Like because of how many views these things get?
I'm very, 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 very sure that I feel very sorry for social services in the UK and the US. I feel very, very sorry for them, because I'm very sure that they probably got quite a few phone calls or whatever. I did find out that social services did get contacted back by school, actually, but that's another story altogether. But yeah, that was the case. But I will say, when I did my first when one of my first videos went viral, which I did ring social services on myself. I rang them up and literally said, "Am I being a am I literally being an idiot? And please tell me if I'm doing something wrong and all this stuff." And they were really apologetic, and they said, you're supervised, you're doing something with your child, yeah, and people are bloody minded. That was basically the conversation I had with them, and then I left it as that. Then I did hear that they have been contacted by people, but all I can do is, like they said, the social services said that what I was doing was fine. My brother is actually working in social services, and he said it's fine, and so I don't have any worry about them in any way, because I'm not they don't think I'm doing anything wrong. So
Well, yeah. I mean, you're obviously not doing anything wrong, and you're not putting your daughter in danger, and you're not forcing her to do anything that she doesn't
no,
want to do.
no,
It's
no,
just one
no.
of those things where people could look at it and go, "Oh, I'm going to call the cops" or whatever, and it just becomes a whole thing. So, I'm glad that you haven't had to like actually deal with that at your house, rather than just
No, no.
through the grapevine you hear that people do whatever. What is your daughter's relationship with them now? Like, she's older, she's grown up with them. I think you said she was 12. Is she still a snake person, or do you think that that'll be something she carries on through her life?
What my biggest fear, because I said with my experience with snakes is like they can forget, but only basis on with my garter snake. So I used to hold my garter snake. He was a very very tame garter snake, and there was this period, as you're a kid, but you're still cleaning him out or whatever, but you weren't handling them as much. And it was just one day, like I think I hadn't I obviously was cleaning it out, water and feeding it, but I wasn't. Really handling it. And it was one day, it was just like got very, very skittish because it just hadn't been held. This is the thing which I think really kind of ingrained it with me is like, we have to keep at it. You've got to provide consistency so the snakes don't forget. They keep learning that who everyone is and all this other stuff. But with my daughter, yeah, she was handling if it wasn't every day, but it was a lot. It was a lot, and the
Weekly.
frequency was a lot. And if she's like doing tea parties or doing imaginative play, the snakes are out anyway. And it just that was how that kind of tied in because the snakes are out, she's playing, but the snakes are just watching her play or just moving in. And that for me is all good desensitizing activity. Is like the snakes learning that there's nothing really going on apart from my daughter playing with plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and that was all fine. Now it's becoming, I guess, because with homework and with a lot of other things going on, she's not handling them or interacting with them as much. But the thing is, it doesn't, as it stands, it doesn't really matter because every time she does go and see them, it's like it's that riding a bike thing. Is then this is why coming back to being able to read body language young and trying and doing things young, you sort of don't. It sort of becomes second nature, and so when she is there, she handles them better than I do at some point. I swear, like Cher responds to her, like she settles down so quickly for her, like by comparison. I don't know if that's me just being anecdotal or whatever, but it just seems like there's certain things where the snakes just respond so positively to her. Yeah, and it's just as if she could not see them for say months and they'd still treat her the same way when she got back, kind of thing. That's how it feels anyway. So yeah.
Do you think that she will, as she gets older, may want to get into keeping snakes herself, or that's too hard to tell? Not that it matters anyway, one way or the other.
I don't know. She loves animals. She loves animals, and she and she, but and she's been badgering me for a royal python in this place. I'm like, I don't want any more snakes. I don't want any snakes. But but she was badgering me for a royal python. But well, what is happening is I'm getting room size enclosures done for the retics, and I said if the maintenance costs aren't too bad, because I'm worried about the running costs of this, it's freaking me out. But I said if that's not too bad, I'll get her a cat basically if that ties in. But yeah, I said I don't know what she wants to do, but I said
Yeah.
if she I think she'd be more than proficient in looking after reptiles. I think, and she's got the experience. She's nearly got a lifetime's worth of experience of retics. So
Yeah, it's amazing. So maybe we can wrap up, finishing off with the plans for the new enclosures. Like, I mean, so right now they're just to kind of, maybe you could just tell us what they're in. I think it barely matters what you keep them in, considering how often they're out and exploring and basically using your home as their greater enclosure. But what are they in now, and then what's your plan for them moving forward?
like they're in custom vivarium Paragon vivariums, 10 foot by 3 foot. And yeah, that was fine. They're massive for me. Even looking at them, they're big enclosures. But as I've seen the snakes get bigger and bigger, I've been noticing that they do need something bigger. They do need something, and I don't think I'm really becoming more of a person thinking that they do need room size enclosures rather than vivariums. And I was actually on the fence on it, but as I'm looking at the snakes now, as they're getting to 17, 18 foot, I'm thinking they kind of do need room size enclosures. And that was kind of, yeah, that was my first thing. So yeah, I need to that. And I contacted a professional zoo enclosure company. And they've done some amazing work, and I'm still I'm on the waiting list. I'm on the waiting list, and I've got everything ready. I've got the finances, got everything sorted. I'm just waiting for them to come and do it. So yeah, hopefully that, yeah, then it's like, yeah, really I'm really looking forward to it, but I'm bricking it because I don't know how much it's going to cost to run. I've asked
Yeah,
for it
yeah.
to be I've asked for it to be as economical and easy to clean as possible. They've been my requirements for this because yeah, I'm a realist. Something over natural would be nice, but it'd be quite complicated to clean. But I've asked them to make it as economical to run and as easy to clean as possible. But
So then, is it going to be like, are you converting a room in your home to the enclosure, or?
they're currently in a shed,
Okay,
which is 22 foot by 10 foot, and it's going to be predominantly most of that. So about 14, 15 foot out of
gotcha.
that is going to be the enclosure. And yeah,
Okay.
that's the idea, and that should be enough for them to explore, and then during the summertime they can come out and enjoy the garden as much as they want. So that was my plan. So I
Yeah,
don't know if
yeah.
it's.
Do your neighbors, are they freaked out by when you bring out two giant snakes into the backyard? Do they not see them, or?
I've got really nice neighbours. The thing is, the neighbours they're family friends anyway. Especially ones on one side, they're family friends and they don't care. And the thing is that the snakes don't intrude on their property. They don't bother them. But they've also come to visit them anyway, so they come to have a look. And yeah, they're not. Yeah, they know they're quite calm animals, and they've never complained. They've never
Yeah, yeah.
complained. Yeah, yeah. So they've taken it stride.
Cool. Well, I can't wait to see the new enclosures get built at some point. I'm sure you'll have that posted on your social media or Instagram or YouTube whenever that happens in the next year or so. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Ed, before we wrap up?
Well, no. I was just, as I said, I had loads of stuff to say, and I said the question, but everything is just so out of order, which kind of, oh, no, because it does what I've been trying to say does actually make sense, but it's so long-winded. So,
No. I
uh,
think you answered all the questions. Like, if you want to look through your notes quick to see if there's anything that you want to make sure you said, you feel free to do that. That's absolutely no problem. But we definitely covered a lot today. So if you don't have anything else to add, that's totally fine. But I'll give you a second to take a look.
no, because I said it. I think a lot of it's just kind of things like things about being tame and stuff, and but it seems irrelevant. This seems irrelevant. Well, that's stuff I put, but yeah, no. It was more. It was more. Uh, oh, damn it! Sorry, bear with me a second. No, I think I've covered it. What I've wanted to say, but it's just I don't know. It just feels like I've just waffled on. I'm really
No.
sorry.
It's great. Can you tell everybody where they can make sure they can see your content on Instagram and YouTube? I'm not sure if you do anything else.
Oh, it's just Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. But I said it's just Sonny, Cher, Retics on Instagram and YouTube. But I just use my own personal. I've just been using my own personal page to put on on Facebook, really, all my other stuff. So if yeah, that's where it's all kind of unfiltered and a bit more sarcastic on Facebook. But I try and keep it a bit more like friendly and snake relevant on my Instagram and YouTube. But
Okay.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, I'll make sure all that's in the show notes for folks and they can go check it out. So anyway, Ed, thank you so much for being here today and telling your story. And this is really fascinating stuff. So thank you very much. All right, that is the end of that episode. Ed, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and sharing your story. I know being on a podcast is not your favorite thing in the world to do, but I think it is just so important to have the story and the context behind the content that you create. And I just, as we were saying at the end, it's just remarkable the positive energy that you've been able to put on snakes, and just changing the general public opinion on snakes is a very difficult thing to do, and I think you've actually crushed it in that department. And I think many reptile keepers too will be warming up to these ideas. Like the people who listen, now I'm talking to the listeners, people who listen to this podcast are very open to the idea of socialization and having animals actually enjoy interactions between their keeper and themselves, or more old school kind of style keeping that's more of a foreign concept. But I think those keepers are even coming around as well, and episodes like this will really help both parties, both the non-keepers and the keepers, realize how intelligent snakes are and realize the potential of the interaction you can have with your animals as a keeper. So thank you so much, listeners. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you share it on social media. Hopefully we can find new listeners with this one, because it's always great to find new people to enjoy the show. If you'd like to support the show, you can head to patreon.com/animalsathome. There you can find different tier levels to help support the show financially, to help me pay for editing and equipment and et cetera, or you can just share it on social media. Maybe I already said that. You can also head to animalsathome.ca to pick yourself up a t-shirt or a sweater. $5 does automatically get donated to the Amazon Rainforest Conservancy. And I think that is it for this episode. Thank you all so much for listening to the podcast. I will catch you in the next one.